What's going on, guys? I'm going to tell you right here on this video why EVs will never go mainstream. And before you click the channel away, I'm going to tell you I'm not an anti-EV guy. I'm just a realist. I got my first EV in 2012. So hang around just a minute and I'll tell you why electric vehicles will never go mainstream. Not the way they are today. Three words. It breaks down to three words. Why electric vehicles will never go mainstream. Electric trucks, electric cars, even Tesla, they'll never go fully mainstream and take over the car market in the United States. And this is why. Three words. Well, that depends. Now, what do I mean by well, that depends? Start out with a little background. 2012, Georgia had a $5,000 state tax incentive. So I leased a Nissan Leaf to commute to and from work. Back then, it had a stated range of 80 miles. Very short range. But work was about 15 miles from my house, so should be manageable as long as nothing else changes. I couldn't charge at work back then, but I made it work. So back then, EVs were very new. This is 2012, maybe 2013. I'm a little shaky on the details there, but it's been a very long time. Anyway, that was my first foray into electric vehicles. Anytime I would pull up somewhere to charge or pull in somewhere and they would notice it's an EV, someone would come up to me and say, wow, how far does that thing go on a charge? So in 2012, I had to answer the question the same way I do in 2024 in my Ford Lightning Extended Range Platinum. It depends. Well, that depends. So, the stated miles on mine should be much better, right? 300, 305 on the Platinum trim because of the heavier wheels and tires. You can get 320 on a Lariat. But the reality of the matter is, well, that depends. Is it really, really hot outside? Because if it's really hot, your range is going to be 20% or more down. But it's not the end of the world unless it's really cold outside. If it's really, really cold outside, your range is going to be 40 to 50% less. Oh gosh, well 300 is 150 now. Man, that's going to be complicated. Yeah, but we live in Georgia. It's not that cold most of the year. But that depends. Are you on the highway? Because if you're going to go 75 to 80 miles an hour on the highway, even in perfect temperatures, your range is going to be about 20, 30% less. Maybe 240, 250 on the highway if everything's perfect. Okay, well maybe that's manageable. But if it's really cold outside, and you're going on the highway, you might only get like 120 miles. Oof, people they recoil. We'll charging stations, right? Well, that solves the problem. We have access to the Tesla network. You kind of do. You kind of do. It kind of depends. So some Teslas have CCS chargers. Some of the charger stations do. And your app will show you, more than likely, and it'll show you what it'll cost. But now to charge at a Tesla charging station, it's 46 to 50 cents a kilowatt hour, or a little more. That's about the same as you would pay for gas. So we've negated the savings, we've made it massively inconvenient, and depending on the station, you might be able to use it if it has a CCS adapter, and you might not. Well, Ford is supposedly going to send CCS adapters to us. So as long as we remember them when we eventually get them and keep them in our trucks, we'll be able to use most Tesla charging stations when they open them up, assuming they're not full. And we'll be able to pay about the same as gas price, except for we'll have to wait 40, 50 minutes if we wanted to go from 20 to 80% or 20 to 90% charge. It gets more complicated. Some of the other charging networks, one of the largest in America, Electrify America, just announced they may limit charging at congested stations to 80%. So if you're on a road trip and you need to get to 100% to get to your next destination, EVs charge a lot slower, 80 to 100, we all know that. But if you've ever had one, the use case is there to get above 80%. Well, they may limit you. So not only does their charging network work half the time at best, but they may limit you to how much charge you can get, assuming it works. So This is a very long-winded explanation. It's meant for not just new EV owners, but also some of the semi-experienced EV owners. Why EVs will never work in North America under the current infrastructure. We have 3 different charge types, right? We have NACS becoming the standard. We have a disparate charging app network. It's just all too complicated. The question, number one question, how far will it go on a charge? You cannot honestly answer that without 75 but ifs, right? The charging, where can you charge question. You cannot answer that simply, but if, right? So all of these things are working against EVs. Now, obviously, I'm a believer in that they're very comfortable vehicles to live with. They're quiet, they get the job done. They're much like an appliance. There's no soul, there's no engine sound. I love that. I obviously miss that, but I chose to drive an EV for the simplicity of it. I like technology, I like the ease of it. With all that being said, I don't know if there'll be EVs to buy in 10 years, outside of probably Tesla. I think the other manufacturers are going to pull back and eventually just pull out. Unless the European Union or the United States government finds a way to absolutely mandate this, I don't think they're going to exist outside of Tesla. Obviously BYD in China. I mean, those things will work. In urban areas, virtually none of these issues apply. Except for North America, we have urban areas, but the vast majority of our country is rural. It takes a long way to get from point A to point B. That's kind of how we like it. We worked pretty hard in 1776 to get to this point. I don't see the American public giving that up anytime soon. So, unless massive changes happen across the board, and we're talking 500 to 600 mile range, no matter what, along with fast charging and one mechanism to do it everywhere, much like you can use your Visa at a gas station, unless it gets that simple to explain how an EV works to the general public, there's no future. I'm going to say it right now. There is no future to EVs unless all these things happen. Is that extreme? Maybe. Will YouTube downrate me on the algorithm for saying this? Maybe. But I'm not anti-EV. I'm just a realist. So drop in the comments. Tell me what you think. Am I right? Am I wrong? Are EVs the future? You tell me.